You're allowed.
All right, I'd like to call the April 4th Village of Flower Hill meeting to order. Let's rise to the pledge. I forgot your name, sir. John Maria. Please lead us to the pledge, Mr. Maria.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, would you like me to start now?
Yes.
Okay, good evening, everybody. On our agenda, the first item is the oath of office for newly elected officials. I just want to say that everybody has already taken their oaths. The term began at noon today, on April 4th, and the act of taking an oath is ceremonial. The signing of the oath book, which has already been done, is the official act. So all of our officers are now sworn in, and we can begin the annual organizational meeting. The first item are the annual meeting resolutions. These are kind of the rules and regulations of how the village operates for the coming year. So after I read the resolution, I will ask for someone to offer the motion and a second. Resolved that the Board of Trustees set the next annual meeting for the third day of April 2023 at the Village Hall. Resolved that the first Monday of each month at 1 Body Heights Hall will be the time and place for the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. Resolved that the official newspapers of the village are Manhasset Press, the Washington News, and Rockland News. The official bank is the First National Bank of Long Island and authorized as the depository of village monies. Resolved that the treasurer and mayor are authorized to invest and reinvest monies in various general and capital funds. And they are also allowed to deposit monies to any particular purpose or not that which are not appropriated to any particular purpose or not immediately required to be expended for the purpose for which they are appropriated in CDs, safe deposit, safe withdrawal savings, treasury notes, or revocable letters of credit issued in favor of the village by Federal Home Loan Bank, whose commercial paper and other unsecured short-term debt obligations are rated in the highest rated category by at least one nationally recognized statistical rating organization, as security for the payment of 100% of the aggregate amount of deposit and the agreed upon interest rate, if any. Money market or class, CLASS-MBIA investment accounts at the best interest rates available in either class MBIA or the First National Bank of Long Island. It is further resolved that the foregoing investments shall be in accordance with applicable laws, rules, and regulations of the state of New York and the United States government. Further resolved that the resolutions of each banking institution for the deposit of monies be adopted as resolutions of this board. Resolved that any two of the following village officials be and are authorized as signatories and co-signatories on the general fund account and the capital fund accounts of the village. Treasurer, Administrator, Mayor, and Deputy Mayor. Resolved that the Board of Trustees authorize payment in advance of audit, claims for the following recurring charges: public utility service, sanitation, postage, insurance premiums, taxes, payroll, and deferred compensation. All such claims must be presented at the next regular meeting for order. Resolved that pursuant to Village Law, Section 4-4122, the rules of procedure of the Board of Trustees shall be as recommended by the New York State Conference of Mayors, a copy of which is on file with the administrator. Resolved that Nassau County act as assessors with the village for the current fiscal year. Resolved that pursuant to New York Village Law 3-306, the administrative treasurer, village justices, and all other officers and employees are considered to have executed an undertaking which shall be in the form of employee and officers liability insurance. Resolved, the following village policies shall be renewed and deemed effective for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. This is the list of all of our policies. I'd be happy to share them with anybody who's interested. I'm not going to read them all. The trustees, you all have a copy of this list. And again, if anybody's interested in receiving a copy, please email me and I will send it. So that's the resolution. So at this point, I would like to ask someone to offer the resolution and then first and then a second.
I will make a resolution.
Okay, read her a second. Okay. Okay, Mayor Rosenbaum and Mayor Dorfman. All in favor by voice vote?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention. So moved. Okay, next item on the agenda are the mayor's appointments. Do you want me to read that?
I don't think it needs to be read. We can have this out for
Okay. Are you sure?
You want to read it?
I mean, I don't mind. I just feel like we have to, I think that
All right.
it's your call. It's your call. I don't have to read it.
That just figured to save time. You don't.
Okay, so, okay, be noted, I'll give you a copy of this. Here you go. Copy is given to the stenographer to be included in the record of the meeting. Trustee Simons?
Yep, that's, the trustees will have copies of it. We'll post it on the website.
Okay, again, trustees have been assigned to various organizations in the peninsula, and this will be posted on the website, and I'm also giving a copy to the stenographer for inclusion in the record. Next, I just want to ask for one resolution approving the appointment. Somebody make a resolution approving the appointments, that your appointments, you can't make a resolution there. Okay, good. Trustee Franco? And I need a second?
I'll second.
I got Denise, okay.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Okay. Well, next is public hearing. I'd like to ask for a motion to open public hearing, portion of the meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Mayor, and do I hear a second? Second. Okay, Trustee Collins. Okay, first public hearing is continued public hearing on proposed local law Z 2022 regarding parking restriction on Ridge Drive West.
I think we decided to adjourn this, correct?
Yes, okay, so what the mayor would like to do at this point is ask for a motion to adjourn this hearing until we receive the parking plan for Middle Neck Road, and at that point we will resume the hearing.
It doesn't make sense to vote on this if we don't know what the possibility of the additional parking on Middle Neck Road is going to be. So once we get that report, we come up with a timeline, and then we can put this back on the agenda when it makes sense.
So I would need a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion.
I have Trustee Wendowski, and then second. Trustee Janice, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anybody opposed or abstained? Wonderful, so this is now adjourned until we receive that parking plan.
Do we need to ask if there's public comments on that or no?
No, it's adjourned. If you can.
Since you're at the board, you could just
I would suggest just asking if anybody was here tonight for purposes of this hearing. If they did, if perhaps they couldn't return to the next site, they could be heard tonight.
All right, sounds like nobody. All right, let's continue.
Second, the next public hearing is also going to continue from last month. Proposal for E, which amends our food license regulation, adding a requirement that food establishments be inspected for rodent vermin and other violations. So, is there any comments on this?
Is this our first or second, my apologies, our first or second public hearing?
This is, second. I think it's is it our second or third, Deputy Mayor?
Reset, there had been an amendment on that date.
Right, so, yeah, so this is our second.
So if we can vote on this tonight then.
Well, yeah, I mean, it won't be held out for the 3 months, but I don't think this is,
I have a question. Is it to be renewed annually?
yes, this is an annual license.
So I think I'd like to make a motion to vote on this tonight. I don't think we need to wait a month. Unless anybody
Just
here
one moment.
objects.
The only thing I'll point out is the last meeting while we're waiting, we did have a resident point out that maybe we should think about having them
This is,
submit an inspection more than once a year. But I think that's the only public comment we have.
so, yeah, I mean, this is.
I think that
annual inspection.
I think from my perspective, annual is probably good enough right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to be over, a big burden, overburden.
You're right, I mean, you're right, there's nothing in the law that says annually, but we do do it annually.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Someone comment.
You can get a grade like in New York City, maybe you can say in the window.
Oh, you have to give your name and address.
Oh, John Marino, 86 Street. That's it.
No, we're just saying that that's the county. We're just asking to ensure that as part of our licensing to any places that serve food, that they provide us with an inspection, a vermin pest inspection.
It's not a health department.
Right. It's just to ensure that it's done at least on an annual basis.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
may I just make a proposal? The question was if the local law requires annual certification. I don't see that it specifically says that in the draft here. I propose, just for clarity's sake, that if that could be added and if the vote could be held at the next meeting.
Okay.
I mean, we do it annually, but it does not say so anywhere.
Okay. That's
That's why I
fine.
asked the question.
Good one.
That's fine, but
Okay, so I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn this to the May hearing. There's no comments.
no, we're not.
Trustee Frank will make that motion.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn to May on the floor. I need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, second by the mayor. All in favor? Opposed? Abstained. Amazing. Okay, so moved. At this point, we are moving into our budget hearing. Okay, this is the annual village budget hearing for 22-23 fiscal year.
Yeah, I changed the slide. Got the right here. Thank you. That was good. All righty, so here's our annual budget meeting. The budget has been posted on the website. I'd like to thank the budget committee, which consisted of myself, Suzanne, Ronnie, Deputy Mayor Harrington, and resident Doshi Moran. Did I get it right? No. So we went over all the annual expenses, we went over all of our revenues, checked everything, saw which ways we could possibly raise revenues. We looked at ways we can keep all our expenses in check, and I think this is a pretty solid budget. I think we're already operating as thin as we can. And I think these numbers look pretty good. So I apologize for this slide that you're looking at right now. The items in red are not current. We're waiting for the county to provide us with the tax roll, and they kind of promised we have it, but they didn't get it to us.
It's coming. It's coming.
It's coming. Key things to look at here is, our appropriations, which is a little less than last year. Some of this has to do with, we went again, conservative numbers. We looked at our building permits and our other permits, which make up a huge part of our annual revenue. And some of those numbers are just, we're predicting with higher mortgage rates and with some of the inflationary things that are going on, that perhaps there might be less building this year. So we went more on a conservative side of that. We look at our appropriations, less our revenue, and the issue balance to be raised by taxes. This budget has a very small 1.5% tax increase in it. And if you look at the average village tax of $831 a household, 1.5% of that is less than $16. So it's like, good question.
No, I was just thinking, looking at it.
Okay. So it's a minimal tax increase. I can't give you the numbers for the fire department yet because again, we don't have our assessments, so we can't use those numbers. It's the problem not having a mother. Which you want to hit page down for me? It doesn't want to work. There we go, thank you. So I put together a chart that we've been using every year at looking at all of our revenues. It's comparing our 2023 budget to our 2022 budget. You can see where most of our monies come in. The majority of our monies are coming from our property taxes. The second amount comes in from our licenses and permits, and you can see that's where we went down a decent amount from our current year to the proposed year. And we have a slight reduction in our state aid and grants. A lot of that is coming from, we get some ARPA funding, and we're getting money from the state Senate. We tend to use that money for some of the roads, and another part of the state Senate grant we are using for parks. And that's about it on the revenue. All right. And all this will be on the website, so if anybody needs to look at it, we'll post this presentation. So the pie chart, again, we can see where all the spendings are going. Rich, you want to jump down 2 slides for me? Actually, 1 slide. I'm going to do expenses. You know what? Let's just do the, I'll leave it. On my notes for our expenses, some of this money we're able to save this year is our auditors. We got the auditors, so we saved some significant money on that when we went out to bid. Some of our expenditure that went up was for contracted services. That's the file scanning, and that's going to be very good for the village because instead of having boxes and boxes of storage here and off-site of our records, everything's going to be digital, which will allow much faster access to our files and the ability for, if we have another pandemic, that everybody in the staff can work. It's easier to work remote, so you can get all the files remotely, so people don't have to go to building files here. Our expenditure for our village engineer will go down this year because last year, or current year, we had 2 big issues, one in Cardinal Lane, and we had the issue in Stony Town. So some of our village engineer costs were higher than we budgeted for. Our village insurance actually has gone up $10,000 this year. But the good thing is it's an offset in disability because we haven't had any claims for quite a while. So our disability went down, regular insurance went up, so it's kind of a wash. Our building inspection supplies and materials, that is up, but that's for the municipal software that we were agreeing to spend money on. Again, that's going to digitize more of what we're doing, and it's a web-based company instead of a server-based company, so that we don't have to worry about hardware crashes, losing files. And this software also has resident input capability, so that residents want to put in, they want to report something that's going on, the street condition or road condition or anything like that. They'll have access to get into the software to do things like that. I think that's about it from that perspective on expenses.
Capital reserve.
Thank you. So what we're doing this year, very different than past years, is we're creating 2 capital reserve funds. All right. Rich, you can pop me down. Keep on going. One more. Okay. Here's a list of all our village hardware, the very heavy and expensive stuff, our capital assets. As you can see, the things that are in yellow, those are items that are getting close to the end of its expected life. And things that are in red, it's past its expected life, but Rich and his crew are doing a phenomenal job in maintaining our hardware. So that's why some of the stuff has lasted significantly longer than its expected lifespan. But we have to start reserving money to replace things. Number one is we definitely need a new pickup truck. One of the old pickup trucks is from 2005. It's old. It's on its last legs. So we want to start saving money for that. And then long-term planning, we need to start saving money. For example, our payloader, the current payloader we purchased in 2001. In theory, it could have been replaced 10 years ago. But again, with good maintenance, we've kept it up. It's in great condition. But we need to start saving money for things like that. Payloader could be, according to this, 72,000. Could be, by the time it's all geared up, it could be close to 100,000. You look at how much the cost of a truck would be. Things start to cost a lot of money, and it's going to be very difficult in a budget to then just have money for those types of things. So that's why we're putting a capital asset fund in place, and we'll be doing a resolution on that shortly, I believe. And then if you go to the next slide. Thank you. We have some projects that we want to start saving for. Obviously, the road repaving, we do it every year, but some years we might need to do more paving than other years, and it's good to have a reserve set aside for the projects. The park walkway, it's what's a good word for it, Mary Jo? Thank you. It needs to be replaced, and we got a very quick quote. It came in, I think it was like $75,000 because asphalt costs are crazy this year. That's a big hit to just throw into our budget this year. We want to expand the existing walkway, so if people use the park, there's not a good, you have to walk through the grass to get from our parking lot to get down to the sports court areas. So we're looking to that. Road improvements, an example, like even now that the village owns Middle Neck Road, we definitely want to look into some improvements there. We might want to be looking into expanded pathway there. Gary's been mentioning for a long time about a village walking path. Middle Neck Road would be a prime space to do that. And other park improvements, like maybe even a pickleball court. So we'll be hearing from a resident on that very shortly. So that's why we're looking at these types of projects. And that's why we need to have 2 capital reserve funds. So one for the projects and one we're going to earmark specifically for hardware. And I think that's my presentation.
Is there any comment or question from the board? Seeing none, is there anybody in the public who has any questions or comments?
One question, and I was possibly able to attend, but the state money, has that ever been determined exactly what it's going to be used for?
The state money or
I mean,
federal money?
federal money, sorry.
Yes. And I'll let Ronnie answer that question, because it keeps on changing on a weekly basis.
I didn't know if it was like set in stone. that they-
Well, you know, the treasury keeps changing their mind and they keep expanding the categories for which expenditures can be made for the ARPA funding. But at this point, it's basically for any legitimate government purpose.
So how are they defining legitimate government?
Villages using it for trucks, are using it for road paving, we're using it for software and scanning.
So we could use it for,
Yeah,
like if a truck broke down and we had.
right, you can't use it for raises, you know, for salary. That's kind of like the only exclusion. But villages are using it to acquire property. You know, so it's anything that a government could possibly do, money can be spent on other than salaries or bonuses.
But yes, part of that can be used for a truck.
I'm just throwing that out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see from the list, there's a lot of stuff in there that we need to upgrade, even like the lawnmowers.
So can be used for that.
Yes, definitely, and I think we have some good ideas in working on this year.
It's like,
No, it's because we have the projector.
oh, right.
That's why my eyes were on.
So if there's no other comment, I would ask for a vote on the budget. I don't forget to take the resolution. So I would ask that one of the board members, offer a resolution to pass the 2022-23 annual budget.
I'll move that resolution.
Okay, we have a second. Trustee Lewandowski, and I'm going to do a voice vote, a roll call on this. Deputy Mayor Harrington?
Aye.
Trustee Dorfman? Aye. Trustee Lewandowski?
Aye.
Trustee Collins?
Aye.
Trustee Frankel?
Aye.
Trustee Janice?
Aye.
Mayor Rosenbaum?
Aye.
Budget is passed. And thank you all. Thank you so much, board, for your support in helping us get this together. And at this point, I would like to ask for a motion to close the public hearing portion of the meeting.
Hold on, before we close, just, what's the update on Walkway? Is that been withdrawn or the application of property line adjustment?
Have you heard us today? It has not yet been withdrawn. It is my understanding that they put in a subsequent application. I spoke to the attorney on for the applicant this afternoon. Apparently, they're still speaking with the client, and they asked that the particular application for subdivision be held over 1 month.
Okay.
I would ask, given that the application was made, if there could be a motion that, based on my discussion with council, that if it was their request that it be adjourned, that the matter be held over 1 further month, if there's a motion to that extent.
I'll make that motion.
And a second?
I'll second. I just one question with it, Jeff. So, given, I assume since it was their request, we don't start any sort of time clock, right?
That is correct. And may I just ask for a vote of the board on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
I just want to take a look as I was walking up to a yeah. Okay, back to the motion to close the public hearing portion of the meeting. That's on the floor. And motion by the mayor, second by trustee Lewandowski, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, public hearing is closed. And it's 8:00. Okay, next item on our agenda is public comment.
Yes, so just so everybody knows, I've decided to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to move public comment to the beginning of all our meetings going forward to make life easier on our residents. I'm going to limit it to 20 minutes just in case it becomes one of those days that everybody decides to come down. After 20 minutes, the rest can come to the end of the meeting. But let's start with public comment. And we have a wonderful presentation coming up. Okay. Use already?
Hello, everyone. My name is John Marino. I live on Drake Lane, which is just off Stonytown. I've been in Florida, so that's Florida and Manhasset. I've been a resident there for 37 years. And I live very close to the Florida Park. And what I wanted to do, and I thank you to give me a few minutes to talk about maybe the possibility of building a pickleball court in Florida Park. The mayor tells me this has come up before, unbeknownst to me, but.
It only came up in the last week. Rich and I were talking about it only within the last 7 days.
So before I open this up and tell you how I measure all this out, just let me talk about pickleball for a few minutes. And some of you may be familiar with the game, some of you may not be. Pickleball was a game that was invented in Seattle in 1965. But over the last 5 to 7 years, 10 years, there has been an exponential explosion of pickleball in this country. It is the fastest growing sport in the US. It's estimated that about 5 million people in the United States right now play pickleball on a regular basis. And believe it or not, it's not just a game for seniors. A lot of people think that, for people over 50. I can attest the fact that there are a lot of young people playing pickleball, and to my chagrin, they beat me all the time, so I can attest to it. Because of the popularity of the sport, there's been multiple TV spots. It's been the Times, the Wall Street Journal, Newsday. There was just a blurb in CNN about it. So I'll give you some handouts on that. The sport with a funny name that's rooted in America. Pass these around. So it's getting a lot of attention, especially during the pandemic, because it's a game where you can actually social distance. Right now, it did explode during this time. Pickleball is played both recreationally and you know about pickleball. Pickleball is played both recreationally and professionally. There was a governing board called the United States Pickleball Association. There was a pro circuit, and in fact, the 5th annual United States Pickleball Open Championship is going to be held in Naples, Florida at the end of this month. I've been to one of them, they're terrific. And it will be televised by CBS Sports. There are many other large tournaments in the US that have been televised by CBS Sports, Fox Sports, ESPN. And the game is currently played in 70 countries. So it's estimated, it's expected that pickleball will make its debut in the Olympics in the summer games of 2027. So it's a funny name, but it's a serious game. How do we play pickleball? Well, it's a solid paddle. Usually they have a composite and a wiffle ball. You don't remember wiffle balls when you were kids, right? Easy. The court is a little less than half the size of a pickleball, tennis court. The net's just a little lower than a tennis net. And it's scored like ping pong. I can best describe pickleball as if you're playing ping pong, but you're standing on the ping pong table. It's an absolutely addicting sport. What do I like best about the game? It's easy to learn. It's a very shallow learning curve, much easier than tennis. After an hour, you can play pickleball. Granted, there's a lot of strategy to the game. It takes a while to get better, but that's the fun of it. It's a friendly game. It's a social game. There are no pretenses in this game. Everyone has a good time. It's a very welcoming game, and it's great exercise. My Apple Watch tells me I burned 1,000 calories playing pickleball for 3 hours. That's pretty good. I myself was introduced to pickleball about 5 years ago when I was staying for a while in Florida. I now manage a league of 25 members. When I got back, I got 4 guys together. We started playing at the basketball park down the hill here. And since then, we've come across this league of 25. Many of us playing tournaments. And it's just been a lot of fun. I've made a lot of friends playing pickleball. It's a very social game. Most of the guys I play with are from Port Washington and Manhasset. And not only do I socialize with these new friends and play pickleball, but it's so important as we read to socialize and make friends as we get older. And this is just a great fun way to do it. So as all this is going on, there have been more and more courts starting to play pickleball. We have private venues. A lot of country clubs are starting to build pickleball courts. A lot of the gated communities are building pickleball courts. For example, in Port Washington, Bill Pond has one. Down the other Shelter Rock Road, Spruce Pond and Gracewood have several pickleball courts that they've constructed. And there actually is a pickleball club out in Melville on 110, which is an indoor complex which you can join. But these are all private venues, so you either have to belong to a club or pay money to get in. But happily, a lot of cities, towns, and villages are now building pickleball courts. So, for example, in Manhattan, on the corner of 36th Street and 2nd Avenue, there's a pickleball complex. It's located for people. Right down here in Alley Pond, at the end of Cross Island, there's a bubble that they made that houses pickleball courts, and there are outdoor courts there as well. Beth Page and Melville have built several pickleball courts, they played at them. Greenport this spring just opened a complex of 5 pickleball courts. Let's think about that place, it's right down from the Great Brewery, so we can call one after the game. And West Hampton has done the same. So there are a lot of public pickleball courts going on. So, with all that said, I thought that Flower Hill should get on the bandwagon. So I went down to the park and did some measuring. So let's start with what's there already. This is Stony, can everyone see this okay? This is Stony Town Road. Here's the existing basketball court. Here is the wall that was constructed about 5 years ago and the concrete slab in front of it where you can practice lacrosse, tennis, football, whatever you want to do. And by the way, this is a very underutilized area. I live right up the street up here. I pass this twice a day, there's never anyone there. I use it for pickleball, but there's hardly anyone over here. So what I did was, looked at this kind of carefully and said, well, could we fit a pickleball court in here? To make a proper sized pickleball court, you need 30 inches wide and 16 inches long. Feet.
30 inches, we can give you
Feet.
that.
Give that, pour that concrete for me anytime, right?
Right here.
Right. So the court itself is 20 feet by 44 feet. But you need this area around here because the ball is served in this area. Also, if someone hits the ball over here, you are allowed to come around and hit the ball back. So you need a few feet on either side here. There's more than adequate room. This is actually 29 feet and this is 58 feet. This site is begging and yelling for a pickleball court. It's perfect.
So we measured, so for the record, the existing wall court area is not big enough, correct?
No, this would not be big enough.
Okay.
This is 20 feet, and then here's a wall, after that is the hill and woods.
Right.
So you can't do that. Okay. So, but this is so perfect, it's unbelievable. It's yelling for a court. Now, if you look at the surroundings, you don't want the ball going all over the place. Already here, there's an existing fence with 10-foot bushes. As we know, beyond this is the Port Washington District building here. So the ball would never escape into here. Here, there's an existing fence, again, with about 10 feet bushes. So even if someone hit the ball over here, it's never going to make it to Stony Town Road. Here, there is no fence, but there's a fairly steep grassy hill. If someone hit the ball here, believe me, it's never going to reach here. So all these are existing fences. Up here, we have woods and hills. So if someone hits the ball there, the hill's going to roll down. And you mentioned this is a wet spot. I have an idea why it is. We'll go through that in a minute.
It's not necessary.
Okay. I'm not an engineer. And this is a new fence that would have to be built. This is 35 feet I made it. It would have to be about 4 feet high, I suspect. Again, both sports are being played simultaneously. We don't want the basketball heading over here or the pickleball heading over here. I did note that there were 2 sprinkler heads here. I went up and down here several times and noted no further sprinkler heads, so I suspect that this is the end of the sprinkler system. And I'm hoping that there is no piping underneath here. So I think it's doable. Now, what do all these dots mean? So the green dots mean that this is existing concrete. This is 580 square feet of slab that is already there. This makes up 35% of the court area. This is 1,000 square feet. You would have to pour 1,000 square feet of concrete. Sounds like a lot, but already 35% of the court is done, okay? So the black dots mean this is new concrete that would have to be poured. After that concrete is poured, then a company comes in that specializes in pickleball and tennis courts. They coat the court with a special coating. They put down 2 posts here and they make a net. And I do have experience with 2 companies, which I'm going to give you guys, because I've helped some people make pickleball courts. I've seen both their works at work, and it's really fantastic. And that's basically how you would like to construct this. So in summary, I guess I would ask you to seriously consider this. I think it would forge a lot of new friendships in the community. At the same time, it's a very healthy way and a fun way to stay healthy in the cardiovascular aspect. And it's great fun for families and their children. I had my 5-year-old grandson playing pickleball, and when he comes over to my house for sleepover, I ask him, say, James, what story do you want me to read before you go to bed? And so is this one, Pickleball with Grandpa. So, If you have questions, let me know. I'll give you a couple of handouts with
So-
my information and also the names of two pickleball companies.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Fortunately, we have 2 members of our Parks Committee here, so it's definitely something for them to look at and consider. But I have a question for you first.
Yes.
Because laying 1,000 square feet of concrete is something we're probably gonna have to plan for.
Yeah.
Could you utilize the existing basketball court?
Okay.
Now,
Good question. Very good question.
not with the special coatings, because I
Yes.
watched the videos the other day on how
Yes.
it's built.
Okay.
But could you utilize the basketball court if we put the proper markings down?
Okay, so a lot
As
of,
a short-term,
yes,
yes.
as a short-term thing would be a great idea. A couple of things about that. So a lot of these places have relined their tennis courts, so you have tennis lines and you have pickleball lines. So if you complain about that, most people are not aware of that at this point in time. So that's what you would do here, you would reline some of the basketball court. You would probably want to line, because otherwise, when I first started playing this basketball court, I brought down my net, and the 4 of us got on our hands and knees like we were little kids, and we chalked it out in chalk.
Right, I'm not.
So you don't want to do that. The only other thing about the basketball court, playing down there, the ball goes all over the place. I mean, you know, just, you know, I'm chasing the ball.
I'm just trying to give you.
And also, the other thing is,
These are a lot of
yeah, that's just what I was gonna say. I live close by there. Sometimes I go down in the evening in the summer and hit the ball against the wall here. And there's always 10 or 15 guys, teenagers playing basketball, playing music, and have a great time. So, and they're there almost every night for the summer. So, you know.
I'm just saying, it's
It's
just something. for
But
us to think
it's a
about.
great thought for starts, and I think you might get people involved. They would have to bring down their own nets.
I have a question. It's a very nice presentation. You have a lot of free time on you.
Yeah, I'm a retired physician.
What was that? Do you have any idea what a court costs?
Well, okay, so, it's from my experience, I'm guessing. I think to coat this and put up a net would be about $4,000, okay, $4,000 or $5,000.
And what material are you using?
Okay, so they would use this type of material.
And this is $4,000?
It's a paint. It's a paint.
But what about the concrete? The concrete?
Now, the concrete, depending on you guys, I'm not an engineer, you guys repair roads, and I know there are some concrete roads in Florida that I see that you have to repair, so I have no idea per foot what it costs the concrete.
I'm not even gonna ask.
Yeah, I mean, we have 2 architects on this board.
That would be,
One of them is me, and I can tell you,
Okay.
concrete is very high right now.
yeah, I can imagine.
You also have a little bit of a technical issue when you have what's called a cold joint. That is. So a cold joint is when you pour new concrete next to old concrete. And you're gonna have movement in that, that's gonna be a problem. So you're gonna have a problem walking in either an expansion joint or you're gonna have a crack.
How do you repair it though?
So, and you also, concrete is not a square foot thing, it's a cubic foot thing because there's thickness to concrete. So, we would need specifications on how thick that would be in order to determine what the cost of pouring the concrete would be.
You had mentioned to me, Mayor, that this is a wet area, and it's interesting to me, there's a hill here, as you know, and the basketball court is higher by a few feet than the pickleball court. I suspect water comes in here. You might have to build a French drain. I built my own French drain around my home. It worked. It's not that difficult to do. I have to tell you.
Careful, the building inspector's here. don't-
Okay.
Yeah, I would mention that.
So that might solve your problem. But the other interesting thing is, if you look at this slab here, if you look at this concrete slab here that was built, I think, about 5 years ago now, it is much lower than all of this here. It is completely intact. There is not one crack in this whole thing. So it was either very well done or the water was above it. I don't know, but it was completely intact and smooth.
So let's let the park committee look at the idea, try to understand it, try to figure out all park costs.
Yes.
And see what we can do with it.
Okay, I mean, if you want me to help get any estimates, if you want me to contact
I
these
don't think that's
companies, let me know.
necessary right away, but I'll do some more.
I just have one question. Is having the fence between the basketball court and the football court, is having a fence behind that end line of the court, is there a magical distance that needs to be?
So just to play the game properly, they say you should stand about 2 feet behind the line here, to serve and receive the ball. This is 6 feet. This is 6 feet. So there's more than adequate space here to receive and serve the ball. So that should be okay.
You know, so there's a minimum requirement behind the end line on the basketball court where you're allowed to have an obstruction.
Well, I don't know, I didn't measure this between the basketball net and where the fence would be, but I would imagine it's at least 6 feet, 5 or 6 feet, from my recollection. There's a line that comes down here that's out of bounds, right behind the post. A little bit behind the post.
I don't think we have to get into the weeds on this right now, but let's look into it. If you want to email the village all the statistics you can on the proper court size and all that stuff, great. And we can take a look at it
You
through
can take
that.
this if you want.
I can't tell you, I played it is fun.
It's very difficult game, and I'm telling you, people will use this.
As a lifelong tennis player, it's very hard to adjust to this.
Yeah.
Because of the.
True, but the tennis players are the best. They have this, they are so good. They have this top spin that just kills me.
Dr. Maria, can I
Thank
just
you.
say something? Because my 5-year-old grandson plays
Oh.
football with basketball.
It's very
But,
All righty, any more questions on this? All right, thank you.
Thank you, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I got it, thank you.
Is there, any other public comment that's not on the agenda already? Are you here about the solar panels? You're later.
Yeah.
You're waiting for ARC.
Okay.
No, we'll wait to do that on ARC.
Very much.
All right, let's continue.
Okay,
the
so
rest.
at this point, I'm going to get for approval of the minutes of the March 7th, the Board of Trustees meeting. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do you have a second? Trustee Dorfman, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I just want to state, if anybody has any objections or
Mary
wants to
Jo
vote
will
no,
abstain
or
if she's not.
Mary Jo's going to abstain. Because she was absent. Next are the claims. Does anybody have any questions on any of the claims?
I reviewed everything seems so.
Okay. And so I would ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
And second on the claims, please. Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Okay, now ARC report.
Okay.
Mr. Evans.
Good evening. This is the March 28th ARC report. We had 6 applications before us. We had 105 Wood Hill Lane. That's a reconstruct a one-family residence. This was their second time there. We still had a number of comments for them, and we asked them to return to the next meeting. 30 Oakwood Circle was a second floor addition, interior alterations and exterior alterations. We just had one minor comment about adding a column, and that was approved with that condition for your approval here. 30 Bonnie Heights Road, it's an attached garage. This was actually approved some 2 years ago, and they came back with an alteration to that, and that was approved as submitted. 181 Mason rooftop solar system. This was an application that was approved several years ago. They had done an addition, and then they came back with a new enlarged solar panel system, and we asked for some modifications. I think the owner is here tonight and would like to discuss it, but I'll continue with this.
Please.
11 Sunnyvale, there's a pool house, pergola, patio, outdoor kitchen, fire pit fence, and driveway. Sounds like quite a bit, and it is. They're fully developing the site. We just were concerned with the driveway line. We wanted to reduce some of the width of the driveway, and they're going to do a modification to that. 10 Crabtree Lane, second floor addition, interior alterations and exterior alterations. We had some difficulties with some of the design based on what the architect was trying to achieve, and we asked them to come back and make some refinements on that based on the style that they were trying to achieve. So we asked them to come back on the April meeting. And that's the report for this one.
One comment.
I have a question. So I saw this and I went over to Sunnyvale, and I gotta ask this question. How are they putting in pool house, pergola, patio, outdoor kitchen, fire pit, on a property that size?
Is it asking a zoning question?
It's just, it doesn't seem like all that could possibly fit without a tremendous amount of variances being issued for everything. Unless they're knocking a house down and put it there, because they don't have a very big backyard, so where is it going?
Well, when you go to coverage, patios and stuff don't count towards coverage. What's the other item?
Pool house, you know, what's?
It's a very small pool house, I'll tell you. It's
like a change.
It's a little covered area and it has a small changing room, not even a bathroom or anything. It's small.
It sounds like a pool house.
Yeah.
It's not a big.
This is the smallest pool house I've
We
seen.
did,
Yeah.
we did look at it, in terms of how much area the back was covered by either paving or structure or whatever. I mean, they did do, I mean, we don't have an impervious surface, limitation in our zoning, unlike other villages. So we might want to look at that, because it did seem like a lot.
It sounds like a lot.
I mean, there's a
I haven't seen the plan.
Ironically, we say a deck counts, but paving doesn't. So, because
That's not unusual.
I mean, we can get into the code, but our code, if you have an on-grade patio, you can basically go setback to setback across your whole rear yard. So if you have, let's say, 10-foot setback, you can pave your whole backyard with, except for the 10-foot setback or whatever it is in that zone that's required. And it doesn't count towards the coverage.
I think we need to look at it. So if you and Gary want to look at the code, then great, I think that's great. The good thing about this 11 Sunnyvale, they actually aren't paving everything. There are portions that he's left open for grass. So there is some.
yeah, no, it's a pretty sensitive design.
It's a nice design,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, it's not like they're paving the whole backyard. It's either green spaces.
Is that-
I think there's one correction for me to make though, Peter. I thought there were minor comments for 30 Vining Highlands Road in that case, in terms of the window disposition on the facades.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes, we were gonna lower those windows. I already I'm sorry, I
So that should be just as with conditions. right?
Yes.
So,
Noted.
All right, is any other questions? I think Rhoda has a question.
Okay. The question that he brought up about paving your whole backyard, that's something that maybe we should think of changing. First of all, we still have sensitive setbacks. You need time for the water to percolate through the ground. If it's paved over, you have a true flow of water and problems. So I think somebody should find out what laws are in other areas to try and prevent that sort of thing. Because you never know when you're too late in deal with it.
Okay, well, that's what Frank and Gary and,
Yeah.
local law.
Yeah, something that I thought that we needed for a long time, is that, to have been,
One person will do that, and it disrupts the stormwater flow for the entire block.
right.
So, the people next door would never have a problem, not gonna have a problem, because they won't have absorption. Yes, it's a good point, Rod, I think we should really look into it.
And there are other
I don't like the idea of being
circumstances that
able to pave
are
your whole
pervious,
backyard.
so.
Well, if they did pay, to the extent that they do have to do dry wells. So it's not like they don't have to maintain their board. So,
We may want to require some kind of permeable surfaces that are, that dry rock or something like that, that it looks like a paved surface, but it allows water to.
yeah, you get some here.
That's you, that'd be a new committee. It's the.
When I volunteer for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think we had a resident on 181 Mason who wanted to speak. Yes. Come on up. Or stay there, your choice. Whatever you want to do.
How you doing?
Good.
So I just have a permit that was approved back in 2018 for the solar. And last week,
I'm sorry, could you just give your name and address for the record?
yeah, Thomas A, 181 Mason Drive. So, last week's architectural review board, they were gonna have me remove 10 panels. And I looked at the approved plans back in 2018. And the location of the panels that they want to remove, I want to alter some of the locations. Instead of removing all 10 panels, maybe it comes to a kind of medium. I mean, of course, yes, my roof is enlarged quite a bit because I did an extension of the house. So the amount of solar panels is more than what was in 2018. But the location of where panels are, I want to try to see if we can mimic the design of 2018.
Well, I would just say that this coming out of architectural review, we become more and more sensitive to this issue. Although we're a group that generally is proactive on, environmental conditions and supporting sustainability, there are a big set of considerations, and we're becoming more and more concerned about the aesthetics of these. And I think you've got enough going on in that house right now that we're trying to limit the impact to the general public. So I think from my point of view, what was in 2018 doesn't really matter right now. This is today's thinking in terms of the committee.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Ng was not able to attend the meeting. He had his contractor there. So normally we do require the owner to be there. So my thought was that if he wanted to come back to the ARC and, just with his input into the project, we would certainly, I also listen to him, I think, in fairness to the process, and what he has to say, and maybe there's a middle ground also that we can work out. Sure.
I just wanted to note for the board and to Mr. Ames that we still have some matters pending in our village court. There are some code tickets that have not been addressed, so I would advise you before you come back to the ARC to speak with our court clerk to try to get that cleared up. Okay. Thank you.
And just for information purposes, the aesthetics, are these going to be on the front side of the?
Not on the direct front, but towards because the house basically has a lot of roof area that comes forward towards the front of the house. It was on those areas towards the front that we said, can we limit it and then leave it on the back end, if you will, of the house. It's a compromise in that, obviously neighbors, they'll have to look at them, but, at least from the public sphere point of view, that it's not as visible.
I mean, yeah, I guess, I think your best option is to go back to ARC, and if you have a proposal for them to consider it, let them consider it.
Okay, great, thank you. So now I'm going to ask the board to offer a motion to accept the findings of the architectural review committee, except we're going to hold that one meeting when they start out at this time. That would be as a continued hearing, okay. So a motion please to approve the findings of the architectural review committee.
Make the motion.
Okay, and second? Trustee Lewandowski, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, Public Works.
Skip Rich.
Report.
He's gonna go back to Rich.
Okay, and our village engineer is not here tonight, he has family that he can take care of.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry not to go into it. The meeting asked this, do we allow AstroTurf on somebody's front lawn?
I know, I don't know. Isn't that awful?
Okay,
It's awful.
on Bonnett's Road, we drive there, and it looks like, are you freaking kidding me? The whole thing is Astro, or whatever they call it, it's probably the wrong word.
Fields are.
do we
It's the
allow
material they
that?
use,
Is
like,
it?
There's nothing in the
professional
code that
sports.
prevents it. That's the
Well, I
problem.
would like to say, and that is something I think we should look into. God forbid, all of a sudden, other people are like, oh, I'm not gonna mow my lawn either.
I know some people have it in their backyards.
It's horrendous.
Are we talking about the burn?
Yeah,
Burn?
yes.
Okay.
Isn't that, that's not real grass, correct?
But from a grass perspective, that, I think, because it doesn't get enough sunlight, I think that was their alternative. I agree with you, I don't like.
And then you don't put grass there, you put rock, you landscape it, you put mulch, you put,
Yeah, put bushes.
there's plenty of things you can.
Shade tolerant plants.
No, it's horrendous.
No, I know.
It's horrendous, so unless somebody, if we don't have it in our code, I think we should look into that. Because to me, it cheapens or it takes away from the aesthetics of our village.
So stupid looking.
It's not even stupid, it's like, what if other people get that idea? It's horrible.
The only thing is, I want to say that I know that there are residents who have this fake grass in their backyards.
Backyard's one thing.
That's fine.
So, you know, it would have to be worded, I mean, I don't know what
So
that
Ronnie,
product is.
why do you think not?
And if I'm the only one who cares, then leave it alone, I'll leave it alone.
No,
won't
I
press
agree
it,
with
but-
you, I agree with
Do you
you.
have a number of appointments? I want to see it.
Just if you go down here, it's like, you can't miss it,
Okay.
the third house on the left.
All right.
All right, so I'm just gonna make a note, I'll send you a little homework.
You cannot miss it.
Yeah, no.
All right, we'll have something for next week.
I just thought they were good furrow when I first started. Then you look closer.
All right, Rich, let's go back, do you want to finish Steve's with your resolution for?
Oh, yeah, okay, so I just, I put together a resolution to, authorize Steve to start preparing bid, documents for our roadwork project this year. The resolution, be resolved to authorize the village engineer to prepare contract documents and drawings for the 2022 roadwork and drainage project, including Fernwood, Greenway, Knollwood Road East and a portion of Ridge Drive West.
For the record, Fernwood is contingent on the National Grid guesswork to be done in time.
To include, but to, how would I word that, to include, but not included, possibly include, potentially include,
Well, it's still being considered, right?
yeah, all right, potentially include, okay, fine,
Just want to make sure, because if they're going to be ripping it up, I don't want to be paid. them.
Yeah,
Just-
okay,
just have it right.
all right, somebody look at that motion, please,
I'll offer the resolution.
and second? Next, Frankel, trustee Frankel, all in favor? Okay. Okay, Rich,
Park benches,
yeah, did you order the benches?
yep, ordered 5 just to replace the ones that we needed. I know we said we're just gonna try to just do the replacements for now.
Yep.
Because other ones are still in decent shape, so
Perfect.
we're just getting the replacement ones. As soon as they come in, we'll put them,
We get an ETA on it, or it's still,
they said about 3 to 4 weeks.
good, that's better than I thought. Wonderful.
And I also, at this point, would like to ask for a motion to approve Rich's attendance at the Department of Transportation Cornell Highway School in June. The cost is $110 plus lodging, goes every year and comes out with great stuff. So, somebody please approve that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, second.
I'll second it.
Trustee Collins, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Also with the National Grid, Brandon from National Grid, he said he'll give me an answer this week about if they're gonna be able to pay that before, to open up those road, those, gas,
Right.
services for them.
Okay,
So
perfect.
we'll know by this week. He said it can either be sometime in August or it could be sometime in, May, which will be fine, because he said it's only gonna take about a week or 2 to just get all their services connected.
Right.
So I know we're still being that timeline to pay if they can do it in April, end of April, May.
Right, because if not, they're going to have to wait 2 years, and I
Yeah.
don't want to wait 2 years for their gas service.
So it's like 6, 7 houses, yeah.
So for those who don't know, Fernwood, that part of Fernwood doesn't have gas service. So the residents got together, enough residents that they can daisy chain down the block. So I guess up to 7 houses are going to get gas service.
And 1 on Spruce too, 2 on Spruce. He said
Right.
1, but Chris got someone else to
All right, so we
do.
got one more person.
Oh, I forgot to mention also that on the engineer's report, that Steve has been shopping the survey for Middle Neck Road with several surveyors. I don't know what the results are, but the county, Nassau County is going to pay for that survey. Next will be my report. I wanted to let the board know that as far as Municity, which is our building department software, I started working with them on their implementation, and we're hoping to have our kickoff meeting in the next week or two. On Microsoft 365, I believe all emails are up and running. I know we've had no problems in the office. Anybody have any problems with their emails? Great. Okay, so we're planning then to implement SharePoint next week, which will get all of our files off of the server and into the cloud. And as far as scanning, the scanning has begun. It should take up to about 6 weeks for the project to get going. 6 weeks to 3 months, I'm sorry. And the vendor thought that we were probably going to come in underestimate. It was, the files are in much better shape than he thought.
Excellent.
That's my report. Mr. Boyko.
Yes, there was one matter before the BZA last month. There were a series of requests for variances, most of which involved retaining walls being within required setbacks. Additionally, there was a request for a pool and patio within a required side yard setback, and a request to maintain pool equipment within a rear yard setback. And reviewing it, what the board essentially determined was that with respect to most of the retaining walls, they would have little impact on the surrounding area. They were concerned about a retaining wall already constructed that extends into the front yard, fairly close to at least the lot line. And they were also concerned about the structures being used, the pool equipment for the pool. The applicant had previously, in a prior proposal, had suggested a location for the pool equipment that was legal. And the board, in reviewing it, determined, well, if it could be put in a legal spot, there wasn't really the need for the variance. So the board granted the request for the variance with respect to the retaining walls, with the exception of the request as to the front yard, which they granted in part, actually modifying it to the extent that it would in fact be almost legalized, because they directed it to be moved back so that the retaining wall does not extend beyond the frontmost portion of the home. And as to the pool equipment, the board granted, however, as to that portion, they said you have to put the pool equipment in a legal location, essentially where it was originally shown on the survey that was submitted, and that was the conclusion of that matter. It was the only one on last month, and essentially the board determined that with those changes, there would be no detrimental impact to the surrounding environment, and the benefits sought by the applicant would then outweigh any potential detriment to the surrounding area. And I'm just looking at Mr. Albinsky to see if he had any further comments.
I think that covers it, yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
I would just make one comment, and it actually follows up on some of the issues we were talking about before. I think rampant retaining wall building can lead to similar problems as rampant pavement can lead to. So I think we need to be careful. I mean, and especially if work is being done without permit. I think we should look at that very seriously and what the penalty should be for building unpermitted retaining walls, because I do think, you know, again, we fall into the position with the zoning board where they'll see a case because wasn't permitted, therefore they built something illegal, and they'll try to somehow get it to be maintained, even if it means minor modifications. But that might not actually really go to the issue at hand, which may be is that they so altered the terrain that it could be causing stormwater runoff problems. So I think the penalty should be somehow rooted in what it would cost to have a civil engineer analyze what was built and make sure that there's recommendations to be made so that drainage works properly. You might want to look into something like that.
I mean, we do have penalties in the code for anything that's built without a permit, but nothing that's specifically tied to like a remediation. and that might be something we could look at.
I mean, I think in any of this, we should look at, but I think retaining wall seems to be a recurring theme.
Because we're a hilly village, you know?
Yeah, and everyone wants their flat yards and whatever, so, but, you know, the fact that, you know, setbacks were not respected and so forth, you know, that this, it can be done, it just has to be done with some care.
Okay, good idea. Mayor, do you have anything separate to report?
I've had a very busy 8.5 hours so far as mayor. Maybe I'll get my cubicle back when I'm scared.
They're coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, should take them.
No,
take
I'm
houses,
moving in, I'm making a cubicle. Yes. Yes. Mike Bloomberg is a very smart man. I'm gonna sit in a cubicle. I
yeah.
don't-
Anybody, any of the trustees have anything separate to report? Okay, great, thank you. And I guess the old business, which is the sewer study, has already been addressed by the mayor in his, trustee assignments. So, I believe that we have a sewer committee now to look over those two bids that we've got to decide how we should proceed. Are you committed?
That's committee.
Yeah, great. I always wanted to be on the sewer committee.
Well, we appreciate
Not as
it,
young-
it's something you don't
As
let
a young
out.
boy, I always wanted.
Trustee Andor.
Yeah, right.
Okay, new business, we have a resolution to introduce local law F, which would amend this attachment in the code. This is what when we redid the local law on height about 2 years ago. We neglected to update this more than you're probably right.
Yeah, I was on ARB.
Yeah,
ARC,
that was
I did.
quite a while ago.
Yeah, 5 years.
Yeah, we neglected to update the attachment chart. So, this is just, because it is included in the code, we have to amend it by local law. So, asking if somebody could offer a motion to introduce, this law.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, second?
So I just want to finish that and I'll ask my question.
Okay, all in favor?
Well, so second.
I'll second if no one seconds.
Oh, okay, okay.
Brian, do you have questions before we?
Okay.
Yeah, before we vote, I guess, height of buildings, homes, has been a topic of conversation pretty regularly for, I'd say, the last couple months especially. So, this is the proposed heights that we want to put in there, or?
This is already in the code.
Yeah,
It's been in the code for several years.
yeah, we did this like 5 years ago, and I was on ARC at the time. And I think the problem that was because we were getting these unusual mansard type roofs, because people, you know, when you have a 10-foot or a 9-foot first floor and an interstitial space and an 8-foot second floor, you run out of enough space to create a gable.
Mhm.
So you get these roofs now that are, you know,
Wow.
Well, the one on Elder Fields.
Yeah, and the houses start to look weird. The roofs are getting weird. So at that time, we figured by increasing it 2 feet, we would give the house the ability to have a gable instead of a mansard or a combination of whatever they're called that they're building some of these houses. But an architect, I don't know what they're called. So it's just weird roofs, so.
So do we feel like this is driving what we're seeing though, and like in particular, I'm thinking the house on Walnut where, you know, folks are getting a 3rd floor basically in their house, right?
Shouldn't, all right? It shouldn't give you a full.
It's no 3rd floor. I mean, they're not allowed to have an occupied 3rd floor, it's attic.
Yeah, I think it looks that way because rather than taking, I think they're in that's R3, right?
Where, Walnut?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as the subdivision.
Yeah.
I think the issue there is that they wanted a steep slope to their roof line. And actually, they have a flat roof on that house. So it reaches the limit by making a steep slope, and it looks like a mansard. And therefore, if it's like a mansard, it looks like a 3rd floor rather than it looking like an attic. Or I guess a mansard is an attic, really, technically speaking, but it looks more like a space on top. I know others have made the same comments, whether it's not.
All right, I guess it's fine to move ahead of this. I think this is, it's just something we gotta take a look at. I don't know if things feel like they're big and, you know, if this is what's out there in the code right now, I guess let's codify it. But I'd say let's think about that, because if we're doing it to just allow the roof to be the roof, then we should figure out a way to do that without people taking advantage of it. And it seems like people have been taking advantage of it, you know? If we're just trying to
There's
get it out
there's
there,
a E-height issue, there's a E-height limitation that other codes have, that at least puts the E.
Spring point, where the spring point is.
Right, yeah, and that would be one way of somewhat limiting overall mass, and still allow you to sit underneath the overall height and do a reasonable slope roof.
I mean, we only changed it by 2 feet, you know, which is only, you know, this much. It's not, you know, you really can't put another
shouldn't be that big of an issue.
You can't really put another floor on it, and it's.
I think that one just happens to be a bad case of someone looking at the code and this is what we can build and.
And a lot of it is like we're seeing in our practice that, you know, people want taller ceilings. And so what used to be on a first floor of a house, an 8-foot ceiling was considered normal. Now people want 9 and 10 foot on the first floor, and they want 9 foot on the second floor. So right away you're at 19 feet, and, you know, so it creates an awkward shape of the house. So you need a little bit extra. And remember, we have sky plane exposure, so you're not going to be able to go up along the sides of the house. You're still going to have to respect the sky plane
You might want to
ratio.
you may want
to look at sky plane ratio and see maybe if we tweak that a little bit. But
I don't think that's ineffective, because the sky plane usually works with the setback anyway. So if you do a normal eve height, you know, any of the houses can comply with the sky plane.
I mean, we could set a maximum E height, you know, at 24 feet.
But I think, like you started to say, if you start to lower everything, then you end up with bad architecture.
Well, that's what we were getting, I think.
So I think that's driving it too, but, you know, but you want to find a balance, of course, you know.
I mean, in R1 and R2, it can support it, it's really, it's not.
I mean, the only other way to do it is go to a form-based code, and which is, you know, that would be a huge undertaking and, you know, a big change from what we do. So, that would be the only, because, you know, this is all playing with numbers.
I'll take your guys.
It also creates constructability issues where you can't have slate, you know, in other words, if you want a slate roof, you can't have slate on certain pitches. You know, you have that, once it starts to get too flat, you can't support slate anymore, so.
Well, that just means you gotta reduce the size of your house. You know, like you're making a trade-off. If I want a slate roof, then, you know, because you just said people want 10 and 9 foot, now you're at 19 feet. So you gotta build in a little for the infrastructure in between and everything. But you're still giving people another 16 feet in the attic then, right?
Well, you're up out of the ground too, you know.
Yeah,
Well, you're assuming you're starting at. You don't put the ground level at grade.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true, yeah. So that's what I'm saying, like how much are you building in there? So
You need 10 to 12, you need 10 to 12.
22 feet would be the lowest in height, and maybe up to 24.
I think Muncie Park's 24.
So, this one was 22.
Maybe
But anyway,
Okay.
you look at those ranges, but.
You really need 10 feet to do a decent roof. I mean,
Yeah.
otherwise,
Right.
you're gonna have
They look squat.
bad, bad.
Or you gotta begin to say you can't, you know, it's the form of the house that you gotta, like, you know, you have to be more traditional in the forms rather than.
All right, so why don't we'll keep an eye on this. Peter, if suggestions for changes in the future, just let us know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like,
Most of the houses are, you know.
yeah, I mean, and there's some places that they have a limitation on what we call a mansard, how much percentage you can have flat roof. You can limit that, but then again, if you do that, then you're lowering pitches, you know.
I think in the R1 we succeeded. There's a great study on Elderfield of this pre 35 feet and after 35 feet. So, what's the guy, the architect, Muti?
Yeah.
Yeah, his is after, and it looks very stately, and it fits on that road. The one across the street was done before, and that it's very low slope. It's like putting a ranch roof on top of a colonial. And, you know.
All right, so let's move ahead, I guess, with the vote, correct, Ronnie?
We already, have that, done. Next is, introducing local.
No, I don't think we
We
did.
got to
vote
vote.
on this.
Oh, we did not
We
vote,
made the
okay.
motion and-
All in favor of introducing local law, Pat? Excuse me. Okay, next is, introducing local law G, to add no through traffic on Middle Neck, no through truck traffic on Middle Neck Road.
So interestingly enough, now that we have Middle Neck Road, there's no law that restricts trucks from Middle Neck Road. So that's,
So the old law is out?
It's a county law.
that was a county road, a county
County road,
road.
county law.
So this now being.
Not that it matters, because tractor trailers go without that, so it's different.
True,
Right,
but,
doesn't matter, because nobody,
but if we have an opportunity for police enforcement, they now can give a ticket for it, or before, well, until this last
Well,
month.
they could have done it before too, as a county road. So-
Well, there's deputized you, Frank,
That's
traffic
okay.
control officer.
I think we need more signage, we need better signage, because, you know,
we just put an extra roof from Joanne's.
Put like one of those things.
oh, yeah, like one of the bars.
With the things that hang, like, with the chains, with the chains.
like by the plan down train station.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious, I think we need more signs, because when you turn from, once the truck makes a turn onto Middle Neck Road, it's done. There's nothing a 55-foot someone's gonna do once it turns.
Well, the problem is that the signs are on state highways, and we are not allowed to put any additional signage on state highways.
We're lucky we got those signs.
Work with the DOT on this,
Right.
probably.
Right, the sign on Old Northern Boulevard is useless because it's too far, and then the sign on Northern is,
Right, I suggested that they hang it up by the traffic light, so when they're start to make the turn, they see it, and then, you know, bail out on the boulevard.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, so on Mayor's report, I'm gonna go back a little bit. I forgot, I sent a letter out to all the residents that are facing and backing onto Middle Neck Road to form a Middle Neck Road Improvement Committee. We'll sit down with them, see what suggestions they have for road safety, doing a walkway, a pedestrian walkway at the Greenway Gate, you know, safety walking there. Brian found a wonderful in-road lighting system that is plow safe, great stuff.
There was a Nassau County Police car today on Greenway.
Wow.
You saw that? I saw him pull someone over, went through the stop sign, pulled them over.
It wasn't Max, that's good.
So-
I stopped and thanked him when I pulled it.
And he was there today, so that's a good sign.
So part of that will be
Maybe
changes
changes
involved. We'll look at beautification and we'll see what we can do to possibly do signage, whatever makes sense.
Okay, so, somebody offer a resolution, I'm sorry, Rhoda?
Yes. First of all, we're gonna put a weight limit on it.
The weight limit's in the, code, so it would be,
And there are a few businesses like the restaurant there. and
excess of
They
8,000
might need delivery.
Well, this is through traffic.
Yeah, I mean, it's through traffic.
This is through traffic. So if they're making a local delivery or a moving van, that would not apply in this case because that's not paid traffic. Through
But
traffic.
weight limit, I think is good.
Somebody offer a resolution introducing the law?
Since I came up with this, I'll offer the resolution.
That makes sense to me. Okay, do I hear a second? Trustee Franco, all in favor? And Tree City is, Arbor Day proclamation, at that time of year, I am not going to read this, but in order to qualify as Tree City USA, we have to pass an annual Arbor Day proclamation. This year, Arbor Day will be on Friday, April 22nd. I would ask that somebody offer the resolution.
The deputy mayor would like to.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
you have to look up, I knew you was going.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And trustee Collins, all in favor?
Are we gonna be able to do tree giveaway this year? Did we hear from anybody?
Oh, yeah, I have 8 people, including you, who want.
No, the tree giveaway.
Oh,
we're doing
I did not buy trees, because I thought we were doing the planting instead, the street tree planting instead. That's what we had
Okay.
determined. Do
That's
you think
fine.
people will miss it?
We had a lot of people last year.
We did.
Everything was was pretty much gone.
They were gone by like 9.
Okay,
They were gone
you
by
didn't have anything left over.
People were lining up like at 7 in the morning. They were just trying to snatch it
Yeah,
up.
okay.
Do it in the afternoon, that's fine.
No, it's true. We'll get to the afternoon when this.
All right, I think we're gone. We had over 200.
I was gonna shop at the end, we have to take whatever.
No.
Yeah, there was nothing.
Okay. Next is a resolution adopting a reserve fund policy. You will have that in your packet, and this is so that we can create our capital reserve accounts. So I'm looking for someone to offer a resolution adopting this policy.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Trustee Wazowski, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Anyone against?
Then we have a resolution establishing a capital reserve funds to finance a type of capital improvement or equipment fund.
So these are for the 2 funds that we're creating.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Right, capital improvement, which will be project and equipment.
Right.
Reserve. Okay,
I'll make the motion.
so your second?
Second.
Trustee Franco, all in favor?
Aye.
And we have a request from Mrs. Anand to waive the short-term rental regulation. There is a letter from her in your packet, and Mrs. Anand is here.
Would you like to speak?
Yeah, so me and my husband, we've been staying in this beautiful area for the last 29 years. Kids grew up here. They don't want us to sell the house because they want their children to grow up here. So we are holding on to the house. Both of us are retired. We don't have income. We are on the corner. We have 2 country club, and we have a mother-daughter sort of a suite. It has a separate entrance, and it doesn't interfere with our living. It has a bedroom, a kitchenette, which I'm offering without a stove because I was told I can't use the stove, and living room, dining area. Also has its own parking inside because it's a big property, so we have plenty of parking. Most of the guests that I get, or I've been getting, are people who go for medical treatment, North Shore, St. Francis, even up to Mount Sinai for cancer treatment, because they have family in the area and the family supports them. So when I got the notice, I immediately stopped. I blocked all the bookings, except for one booking that was already done by a family in Manhattan for 2 months because the grandparents wanted to come and they've moved to Florida. They used to live here. They've moved to Florida and they're coming here. And the kids don't have room in their house, so they're looking for close by place for the parents.
So when you say for 2 months, they're gonna stay there,
Yes.
your residence for 2
Yes.
months?
Yes, but what I was requesting is most of I normally don't, I just get a thank you on the thing that here one lady just put in a thank you, her daughter was treated in St. Francis.
Right.
So basically it's working out for, it helps the community, it helps me. It helps because both of us are retired, it helps pay off, part of our taxes to maintain the house. So I was just hoping that it would be allowed.
Did you say that the house has 2 kitchens?
It has a kitchenette sort of a thing, but I'm not allowed a stove, so it has like a fridge. I don't give them a stove or a dishwasher, but it has a fridge, a sink, things like that. It used to be a doctor's office, I believe, prior to me buying the house, and a doctor's clinic was over there. So it has a commercial attachment to it, I believe.
So you've been in the house for how many years?
29. 1993 we moved in.
So what was purpose of that space for the last 29 years?
Because the children were with me,
Have you rented it out before?
we rented it out once before, but they told us long-term rentals are not allowed, so we stopped renting.
When was that?
I've forgotten now.
It was pretty recent, right before, the COVID, I think.
Okay.
No, it
But
was,
yeah, a gentleman came in and identified himself as living in that home, and I knew it belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Lenon, so that's how we.
So how long was that person living in the apartment?
I'm sorry,
How long was that person living in the apartment?
I think about a little over a year.
Okay.
And then I was told that I'm not allowed, so we didn't, we requested him to move and we pulled it off the market, for rental. And then I checked Airbnb was allowed, so I moved, I did Airbnb about, I think it was in 2000, November, December 2019. And this was, he was renting, I think, 2018 or 17, something like that. So then when Airbnb was allowed, I put it on for Airbnb. Now I'm told that again, short-term rentals are not allowed. So this actually, because we are not earning, it helps us, financially.
I understand.
What about other code violations that you've had at your home that repeatedly come up, like the landscaping vehicle? Seems like you're trying to find ways
Yes,
to
I already,
raise revenue. Oh, let me finish.
I did not.
Hold on, let me finish. It seems like you're repeatedly trying to find ways to raise revenue when you're not in compliance with the village code.
No, I'm sorry. I never raised revenue from him. He never paid me a cent, and neither is he my gardener.
So you just let a stranger park their truck in the driveway?
I'm a Sikh by religion,
Okay.
and I don't know if you read a lot during COVID and other times, and even now in Ukraine, we sent a lot of support. So there was this gardener who came and rang my doorbell and said he would do my gardening for free. And if I could let him use the place to park his thing. I told him that I am a very good gardener. I don't want to lose him. You can park over here. What I need from you is, I will pay you for, if there's a snow or something, but make sure that you come right in the beginning. Don't make me a tail end person. So just give me that privilege. But I did not take a cent from him. And when I got this notice, I told him, I came and I spoke the very next day to her, and I asked her if, he's starting new in business, he asked for help.
Okay.
And I allowed him just as a help. I'm not getting a cent from him. You can call him, you can ask him, I'll provide his number. And neither does he, my gardener.
Ronnie, didn't we have a vote at this, and Randall, was there a vote at this house at one point too? Or is that different property?
That's the property on Middle Neck Road. We could talk about doing a vote. I didn't look in the last 2 days. Do you still have this? There was a
I
trailer.
told him,
There's
yes.
a commercial trailer now parked on
Yes,
the property as well.
I told him as of April 1st, you have to, I gave him like a week because I think I got it the last week of March. I said, you have this March week to find a place and move out. He hasn't moved out. I'm going to call him again tomorrow morning and say, please move out, otherwise they'll tow your truck because.
Well, we won't tow it, but we will by the end of the week issue you a violation.
Okay, so I mean,
We can't tow a vehicle from a private property.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
We can't do that.
So I requested him nicely, and he's a very nice person. I'm surprised he didn't move it out. Maybe he didn't find the place.
Regardless, it should be.
Okay.
You've had regular commercial type vehicles in your lot. You should have that removed. It is a residential neighborhood.
I had no idea.
Okay.
I had no idea. When she told me that, I immediately, because I'm not gaining from there. It's just that I'm doing it as a help to a person who lives, I believe, he says, I live about 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away, Mineola.
Okay.
Yeah, so he said, I live about 10, 15 minutes away, this will really help me. So I just did it. We don't turn down people in our community, we don't turn down, people who come for help.
That's a great thing, except when commercial vehicles are parked.
Yes.
This
But we
is a-
don't want to
listen,
violate it.
We're in a very nice residential neighborhood.
Yeah, we don't want to violate.
We want to maintain the quality of life in this village, and that's primarily why we don't want to have commercial vehicles parked in people's driveways.
Okay, it did not bother me, so I let him park. When I found out it's against the village rule, I informed him.
So
I'm going to try to get him out as soon as possible.
as for a waiver, actually, a more important question. Ronnie, your mother-daughter, as described as mother-daughter type apartment, is that legal?
There are probably a handful, less than 10, probably even less than 8.
Right.
Grandfathered in mother-daughter houses in the village that have a CO for a mother-daughter.
Does this property have the proper CO for
It
this?
does not have a CO as a single-family home.
Okay.
I would imagine because it was originally a single-family home with a doctor's office, the doctor being a resident of the house, which
Right.
is permitted.
But it seems like it's been rented out on a regular basis, but it has been rented out before, so this is a rental without a proper CO. It's not a CO for what it was used for at that time, 2017, 2018, correct? Okay.
I'm sorry?
You don't have a certificate of occupancy for the use of that portion of the
No
house?
accessory unit. You have to have an accessory unit attached to your CO to use it as an apartment.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand this part of it.
Peter, you want to?
Well, yeah, and it's not even in our ordinance to allow that. I mean, if they were grandfathered in, that was, prior to the current code. So it wouldn't be permitted
Right,
as an accessory apartment.
So you're asking for something that by our village code you can't do. It's not permitted to have.
Yeah, and just to add, so this was done without, it was converted, I assume, from a doctor's office to now an apartment illegally.
Right.
And under the current code, it wouldn't even be allowed under our zoning code because we create a second household unit.
So
So basically a two-family. So I don't see how that could be approved under our code at all.
So what I'm understanding is the doctor's office is allowed.
Only if the doctor is living in the main residence.
You couldn't have a doctor's office if you're renting it out to, let's say, Dr. Mary Jo Collins. That wouldn't work. It'd have to be
So
someone.
you would have to be the doctor.
As a home occupation.
The doctor has to be the resident.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to just understand here. So, all right, and when I bought it, it was already a mother-daughter house. Because their mother-in-law was living over there.
You're saying it was a mother-daughter residence, so you're saying the person who sold it to you was renting it out as an apartment?
No,
It was a
his
doctor's
mother-in-law
office.
was staying over there.
That's what, there's a difference between being used for a doctor's office and the unit being rented out for residential
It
purposes.
was first a doctor's office, later his mother was living over there. It was a mother-daughter suite, house when I bought it. And
So,
I mean,
so this is the confusion, okay? When you bought it, you were under the impression that it was a mother-daughter unit. It is not. It was never permitted, that was never a permitted use for. So I'm sorry that whoever sold you the house represented it that way, but it was not ever. You're calling it a mother-daughter unit. It's not a mother-daughter
I
unit.
mean, if a doctor lives there, he's allowed to have his mother live in.
well, on Manhasset Woods Road, we have one home that went to the zoning board because, the mother wanted to live with the daughter. They came before the zoning board, they got permission, and they were granted this accessory apartment in the
Is she
house.
charging rent?
No, it was the mother.
So that's what I'm at, so
Right,
same
and
as.
since the mother
but
has passed, nobody's lived there.
That's what I'm trying to,
Right.
just to understand the clarification. Is the doctor was living there, presumably his mother, his wife's
no,
mother?
so the doctor was the first owner. Mr. Thorpe was the second owner from whom we bought it. So he had told us that the first owner used it as
Doctor's office.
a doctor's office. I used it as a mother-daughter because it's now a mother-daughter suite. And, I mean, for me, it was a guest suite for my guests to stay,
Which is a legal use of it.
which is illegal.
Which is a legal use, it's legal
Okay.
to do that,
So
yes.
I used it as a guest suite because, you know, a lot of family and friends came from India, so they stayed over there. And that's how I used it.
Which is perfect. That's what it's meant to be used for. Yes.
Okay, so that was it. Until recently, after we retired, I retired in 2017. So by 2018, then I think I got the first tenant. And then I was told I'm not allowed, so I stopped it. But then I was told Airbnb is allowed in the area. So
Airbnb was never allowed, there was no law not permitted. It was never permitted, it just was never not permitted.
okay, so I was
So
told
we never-
it was not restricted. Airbnb is not restricted.
Right.
So then I put it on Airbnb.
Right.
And now I'm requesting permission for it to be in.
Who told you it was not restricted?
I had called Nassau County
Okay.
and I was told Nassau County allows Airbnb.
No,
Can I just clarify?
Go ahead, Peter.
No, you can't have, if you're going to have a guest, that's one thing, but this is acting as a separate household unit. They're not eating in your kitchen. They're separate and apart from you, as you described. You said they have nothing to do with you when they come into the house. So that's creating a second household unit. Yes, you can have guests in there, and they're gonna have dinner with you, they're gonna eat with you, they're your guests. But when you're renting it and somebody leaves by a door, doesn't come into your house, doesn't eat with you, that's a second household unit.
Irrespective of it's Airbnb or not.
Right.
And unfortunately, Nassau County gave you bad information, is what I'm saying. So if you want to know the rules for operating your house in the village, you should talk to the village staff. That's what I was telling you. So you've been operating under a misunderstanding of the code in the village.
So the village code is different from Nassau County code?
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, so as soon as I got the notice, I came to her and I, asked her what I could do. And it did say over there that under financial conditions, you would permit.
So
So
we could consider it.
you can
We
consider
can
it.
consider it.
Sorry,
It doesn't
fine.
mean it's a blanket waiver.
Yes.
But
My request for consideration.
That would only apply if it was a legal.
Correct, so the issue
is an illegal.
Right, so that's what I was probing. So we couldn't even approve it for financial hardship because what you have is an illegal apartment in your house. So regardless of the financial situation, we couldn't approve this use because your unit is not legal for renting out. It's not allowed in village code. Hasn't been for how many, 20, 30
It's
years,
a doctor left.
right? So that when you rented it out to that tenant before, for a year or two, that was not a legal use of your property. And thank you for stopping it at the time, but I don't think we can even consider your request for financial hardship because this is not a legal dwelling unit. Correct?
Yeah, I think the intent of this is if you rent your house, don't you like it for a room?
Or rent a room.
Or-
Well,
No,
let's
no,
not, no,
no,
no, let's not even do.
no. I think the concept here was that, the Airbnb concept is you have a summer house and you go stay in your summer house and while you're away, you rent your house.
Right.
You put your house on Airbnb or Vrbo, whatever. So the intent here is to prevent people from renting their primary residence out. Short-term, correct? But this is not a primary residence. This is a secondary residence that's not permitted in the first place. So it doesn't apply at all to this.
We can't approve the illegal use of your dwelling. Because it's a separate dwelling.
If it's just the rooms that are rented, you wouldn't allow?
That's a separate issue, so I personally would not be okay with that either. But you're asking for something that we can't even consider because you have a non-legal apartment in your house. We can't even consider any waivers of anything, I believe, because it's correct, Jeff? It's not even illegal.
I just want to go back to what I think Mr. Opinsky was saying. I think what, there's a provision, you can't have more than one principal dwelling on the site. I think that's what.
I'm sorry?
You can't have more than one principal structure. Is that what you were alluding to, Mr. Opinsky?
No, I was talking about a household unit. In other words, another person or persons that is in part of the house that is not part of the family, not sharing in the household unit, which generally is the same kitchen.
Not living together as a family unit.
Not living together as a family unit. So now that creates a separate household unit, which is not permitted under the code.
Right, which you.
Doesn't have anything to do with building. It could be, somebody in the garage or somebody in the house itself, like in this condition. But you have a second household unit on the property.
But there's a connecting door, and like the guests can't walk in and out of the door.
Well, so I thought I heard you said they have nothing to do with you in the
No,
beginning of the statement. You don't, you said it's totally separate.
It can be separated, it can be joined.
Do they eat with you?
No. They call from food from outside.
You can have your guests, your friends, your family come and stay with you in the unit, but you cannot use it to produce income. You cannot allow somebody to use it who is not part of your family, whether it's a friend or a guest or somebody staying with you.
Yeah,
It has to be
that's
a-
a part of it. So I don't know if our ordinance has it, but generally it's, you're running a business out of your home.
Right.
What the code says is that it allows leasing or letting of a single-family dwelling by a homeowner to another single family or individual for 90 consecutive days or more, while the owner does not occupy the premises.
So that's what I had explained. Your house is empty.
You want to rent your entire house.
But it also says unless there is financial,
But you're
But you don't even
asking
need-
us to approve renting part of your house, which we do not allow in the village of Flower Hill. Unless you are one of these pre-existing mother-daughter units.
I think the intent of the exception is the short termness of it. In other words, if you had a financial, and I needed to rent it for a month instead of the 90 days, that would be the exception that the trustees could grant, is my
It would have to be
understanding.
the house. You have to rent the
And it would have to be the
entire
whole
house,
house.
and they would have to move out of the house.
Right.
So that a new family rents the entire house for 3 months. That's what this law intends to do. That's what this addresses.
Right.
So it doesn't address running a multifamily business operation in an existing residence, which is no different from someone with 5 bedrooms renting out 5 bedrooms to 5 different people. Same thing, you're not permitted to do that in the village, correct?
Hey, I think we beat this up enough.
Yeah.
This clear doesn't fit within what the village allows, and the waiver doesn't fit it. So I would say if you want more clarification, we can follow up after the meeting, you can speak with staff, the village attorney, but, I think we should move on at this point.
I just have one question for Mr. Alinsky. To come into compliance, what would Mrs. Zanon need to do? Would you need to remove that second entrance to the home?
Well, we moved the kitchenette, and, basically it's an enforcement issue. Whether, if there's a door there already, then it's open to the house. So that could be a side door. That's not necessarily, something that needs to be changed. But it would be remove. I would say remove the kitchenette.
The kitchen area.
And it's, it's like going in somebody's home, but enforcement and basically putting something on the records that can't be rented out.
Mhm.
But if there's changes too, I don't have plans of any changes if it changed from when it was a doctor's office.
Right.
So we have to legalize any work that was done in there. If there's a bathroom, that's fine. Bedroom can have a bathroom, but it would have to be used as part of the house by part of the family.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, and again, our code considers single-family house renting. I don't know renting out part of your house is permitted. under
No,
the-
that's why I asked, it's not, it's not conform, so we can't
That's
even.
even if all that stuff was to be addressed, it's still not permitted under our code.
Right.
So Frank's comment earlier. So I don't think she can come into compliance unless they rent out the entire house for the minimum period of time specified in the code.
But they can't live in it.
That's correct.
So only rental of the whole house is allowed, not
Correct.
part of the house,
Correct.
even under financial
Correct.
request.
Correct.
Okay. The next item is our history report. Historian Rhoda prepared a really interesting report on the Roslyn Trolley. I absolutely recommend you all read it if you have not already. What a deal, 5 cents per zone.
Staten Island Fair.
Yeah, and that's the end of my agenda.
Next meeting is Monday, May 2nd, 7:30 PM. I'll make a motion to end this board meeting.
Motion to adjourn, by the mayor, do I have a second? Deputy mayor, all in favor?
Aye.
So
Rich, you
moved.
want to?
Great job, Lolo. First one.
Thank you. First one goes. You know, I did have a whole speech that I forgot to make.